Procurement, and on behalf of my staff who put this, as well as the county staff who are participating in this event, I want to thank you this morning. I want to give a special shout out to Sharonda Baltimore, who is manning the IT system that essentially is holding all this together. I also want to thank Bethany Manimbo, who worked really hard to put this massive event together. I was just saying before we started that we have over 500 people registered for the different sessions that are going to happen over the course of the day. But pulling this together, bringing almost 15 different county departments to work together on an event like this is not a small undertaking, especially when you're trying to conduct such an event virtually. Now, as you settle in with your coffee, I want to share a story with you. And as far as I'm concerned, this is what qualifies as a holiday story. The story has to do with this very famous photograph that was taken on Christmas Eve in 1968. For those of you who are familiar with it, of course, you know that this photograph is called Earthrise over the moon. And it was taken by the astronaut William Anders when he was part of the Apollo 8 mission. The mission was supposed to be an exploration of the dark side of the moon. This was the first time that human beings were going to be flying, orbiting the moon, taking pictures of the side of the moon that nobody had ever seen. And as you can imagine, it had captured everybody's imagination. The picture that stole the show in the end unexpectedly was not one of the gray and somewhat drab looking moon, but it was of the Earth. It was this photograph that you see right here. Now, the interesting thing about this picture is it was the first time that Earth was ever photographed from this distance, and more importantly, photographed in color. And just something about this image of this little blue marble just floating in the blackness and vastness of space as it supports all of life and everything we know, it just somehow tugged at the heartstrings of the world all at once. It dazzled people with its beauty and how it stands out. And some people believe that this photograph actually is what kicked off the modern day environmental movement. This idea that this precious thing that we've taken for granted for so long, it's been here all along. And so this picture received a lot of notoriety. In fact, I think it was summed up best when after the mission, the photographer, William Anders, the astronaut William Anders, said we had set out to explore the moon, but ended up discovering the Earth. And I share the story with you because I feel like to some extent, county procurement is a lot like the Earth. To some extent, we're always taken for granted. We've been part of your ecosystem for years, but very often it feels like it's one of those things that people don't often think about as a place to go when you're looking for business opportunities. Just as taking a step back gives you a new perspective, just like you see in this photograph, today I'm going to ask you to take a step back and get a new perspective of county procurement. I'll talk about some of the changes we've made, but more importantly, we're going to be spending the better part of the day talking about procurement opportunities that you have. The hope is that you're going to reimagine our office just like we've tried to reimagine a virtual event for you. Now, what today's event is going to incorporate, of course, is opening remarks from myself, from Tiffany Ward, from the county executive, members of various chambers of commerce who helped me make the event possible. The different departments that you see on the right side, commodity clusters that we've put together for you, whether it's the IT commodities or the constructions and facilities management. Each of these is organized so that multiple departments can tell you at the same time what it is that they're working on. I know that business right now during this time of COVID is tough. And so what we've had to do is reimagine a virtual trade show. We've had to think about how actual trade fairs run, and then, where you'd have each department hosting its own booth, and then think about how in a virtual setting that would make sense, which basically means clusters of departments participating in this event simultaneously to give you the most value. So what we're going to do in terms of value add for you is record this event. As we go through the sessions, we're going to be fielding questions via the chat box rather than via microphone. This just allows us to have a more seamless event where the different departments get to present their solicitation opportunities, but at the same time, you do get to ask your questions. And again, everything from this session is going to be posted when it is completed. 2020 has not been my favorite year. Understatement, if ever there was one. I've suffered personal losses this year. It's been one of those years where, how they always said hindsight is 2020. My slogan has been I need 2020 to be hindsight. But as I was struggling through this year, I did come across this quote. I don't know who it's attributed to, but it said, stop counting the days and start making the days count. And something about it just struck me, because I really was pretending or behaving like I was holding my breath and just waiting for something to end. But I was also, honestly, letting days of my life pass by, honestly waiting for them to end. And there's something tragic about that, and nothing should ever let you feel that way. I decided as a result to learn how to speak Spanish. I'm 4 months into that. No hablo mucho, pero entiendo si habla despacio. But at the same time, and then, someday I hope I'll actually be able to do an el discurso in Spanish. But I also realized that our office has an opportunity during this time. We've got this opportunity to try to use this crisis to bring about positive change. And one of the things we did very early on in the pandemic is we actually brought on e-procurement to the Office of Procurement. So we piloted our first ever electronic procurement in June of this year. Keeping with the theme of going digital during this pandemic, we also completely redid our website. We took a very user-centric approach to how we designed the new interface. It completely thinks about and puts front and center the user experience in how it's been designed. So you can already see on the right-hand side, there is a section dedicated to videos. Realizing that a lot of people's interest is better captured by 90-second clips, we've begun to build a catalog of instructional videos on how you can work with our office. We created an entire section dedicated to vendor resources. So when it comes to those things that vendors wonder about, starting with how do I register, you have a separate dedicated section that will allow you to navigate our processes. Besides our award-winning Solicitation Tracker, this new website also features a section called Projections. And what that basically is it gives you the ability to anticipate what solicitations are going to be upcoming. This should help you with business development during the pandemic. It gives you a roadmap of what opportunities you may have in the next 12 to 18 months that you can participate in. Today's event, honestly, should help you with business development in 2021. As we go through the day, you're going to see each of the departments present to you what solicitations they envision coming up over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. And you don't have to attend all of these sessions. You may be interested in attending just the IT session that is to immediately follow this session. Or you may be interested in attending the section on construction services or on professional services, the last session that we have. Whatever it is that makes the most sense for your business, take advantage of it. Going back to this idea of stop counting the days, start making the days count. This is an opportunity for you to make this time count. Ask questions of the facilitators, get to know the facilitators, put yourselves in a position so that when these solicitations come out, you are already prepared with your ducks in a row. With that said, let me quickly tell you a little bit about the speakers, the guests who are going to be following me. First, I have Tiffany Ward. As some of you may know, she is the new Chief Equity Officer of Montgomery County. When I think about what big opportunities we have in 2021, I think working more towards the goals of equity is going to be a big opportunity for us. And so it is not just subtle signaling in that I have Tiffany Ward here speaking to you this morning. Mark Elrich has been a champion for businesses since I first met him, where our conversation was about local preference points and how local businesses deserve to have a level playing field in Montgomery County, and how we should have some sort of preference points law in place that would help local businesses. It's one of the first things I was able to accomplish, luckily, before this pandemic fully took grip. Now, he'll talk to you, followed by three ladies, by Jane Redeker, Janetta Italiano, and Marilyn Balcom. And the reason why I've invited these three ladies, these awesome ladies, to speak here today is there's a bit of a backstory to this event. It was supposed to happen as a live event in April, and it was the first event to actually become a casualty of the pandemic. We had to cancel it, obviously, because it was in the interest of public health, and I'm pretty sure it would have been illegal to move forward with it anyway at the time. But as I was lamenting the tragic loss of this event, these three ladies actually followed up with me by phone and convinced me to conduct this meeting in a virtual format. I guess the moral of this one, if you talk to me, I will actually listen to you and change my mind. And two is that I truly see this as a partnership. You know, I was saying that we had 500 people registered for this event. That would not have been possible without the support of folks in your capacity, ladies. The Chambers of Commerce have been a huge ally for us through this pandemic in getting the word out about things like PPE, in understanding what the pain points were in terms of things like PPE, in terms of thinking about and having the courage to host an event like this. This was the first reverse trade show that we were going to be hosting, and I was petrified that it would be a failure. But talking to the three of you made me realize that we can pull this off. So hopefully the 100+ of you that are now signed on get to enjoy the rest of this session. But for now, let me pass it on to the next speaker, and that is my good friend, Tiffany Ward.
Thank you, Ash. I'll introduce myself to everybody. I'm Tiffany Ward. I am the Director of the Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice. And just for a little background, I have been with the county for just about 14 years. For 12 of those years, I was an aide to then council member Mark Elrich, with a portfolio that handled housing, health and human services, education, and recreation. It's kind of an interesting throw-in. And of course, any other duties as assigned. Just a little bit of background, getting into public policy for me really came after a career in the nonprofit sector, in the labor sector. And so I think I got tired of just treating what I thought were the symptoms of a very serious issue in the United States. And I thought that I wanted to work in policy because I wanted to work where they made the rules. And if we were going to get good lifestyles and prosperity for everybody, we should be talking about how the rules are set so that everybody can prosper. So for the past 2 years, I've been working in the racial equity work here in Montgomery County. So for the first year, we spent a good amount of time educating both the greater community and really our leadership on what racial equity is, what we mean when we say racial equity. We know that we have a very what I call a racial hierarchy across issue areas. We had spent years, decades, trying to fill gaps, disparities, whether it was across health, right? We know that African Americans and Latinos in this county and in the United States have a much higher mortality rate. We know that there's a huge wealth disparity, right, in this country and in this county. And as in the health disparities, the racial hierarchy holds. White people faring best, Black and brown people faring worst. And we saw that in education and everywhere else. And so we decided, to the credit of then Council Member Mark Elridge and Nancy Navarro, that we were going to take a look at all of these with the same racial equity lens. And so we started to educate leaders and the community at large about what we were doing, why we were doing it, and that, in fact, we are in good company in doing this work. We're doing this work in Fairfax. We're doing this work in Loudoun County. They're doing this work in Seattle. They're doing this work in San Francisco. So we went on about getting our leaders educated, including a class of directors, including Ash, to really look at their processes within their departments and telling us where and how we thought our minority population was not either accessing services or not getting the outcomes that they should have. And so we examined these processes with the Government Alliance for Racial Equity, along with a whole bunch of other jurisdictions at COG. And this was all before I became our Chief Equity Officer. So I was confirmed February 25th of 2020, and probably 2 weeks later, COVID hit, and then sent me, quite frankly, spinning. I knew that this pandemic was going to hit the communities of color particularly hard. We knew that the health disparities were already pretty bad. And then when the pre-existing conditions were announced, I said, oh, this is not going to be good for us. This is not going to be good for us. And so I spent a good amount of time trying to get into rooms and help other folks make decisions about how we were closing down in a way that considered folks who were dependent on cars, right? So when we think about transportation, folks don't often think about how that is a racial equity issue. But if you live in a neighborhood where there are not a lot of walkable services and you don't have a car, how are you going to access, let's say, the grocery store, or let's say even health services? So I spent a good amount of time trying to get in touch with my friend Chris Conklin, with Ash Shetty, with other folks to say, hey, what are we doing in response to this with a racial equity gaze? And we did that, or at least we tried to do that. When I say we, I really just mean me. So I tried to do that in this virtual space. And so we have been doing that. I've been doing that since February. And at the same time, trying to shape how we respond and how we were going to recover from this COVID epidemic or pandemic. So we know, just like the health disparities, that the Black and brown businesses in Montgomery County were also going to be suffering much, much worse, right? So I tried to get in the spaces where we're creating our PPE program. I tried to reach out to Jerome Fletcher, who's our ACAO, who's designing many of these programs, to talk about what the needs of these communities would be, the paperwork and all of the very many programmatic and process issues that folks simply may not have the bandwidth for, and how we were going to build that into their programs or into their processes. So this past 9 months has been a whirlwind for me. Procurement is front and center. As a new director, it has been front and center in my life too, as I have had to execute many contracts, and I now know the very real importance of procurement and the processes. I have a couple conversations I have with Ash about some efficiencies I could suggest. But we also know that, much like housing, much like health, and much like education, it is critical to the prosperity of Black and brown citizens. And if we are going to have prosperity for everybody in this county, that procurement, much like those other departments, must lead the way. I will credit Mark. We've been talking about this since I've been working with him. And that's been a good long time. When I started there, I was young and fresh. I'm now fresh, but maybe not so young. So I think that Mark has been a champion for prosperity and for equity probably his whole career, but especially as long as I've been working with him. And this is just a manifestation, or one of the manifestations of his principles and his values. I don't know if Mark is ready, but I'd love to introduce him to you all and let him talk to you all about his vision for procurement in the next few years. Are you ready, Mark? If you're ready.
I'm ready.
The mic is yours. Thank you so much for your attention. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
So good morning, everybody. And it's really nice to see everybody here. This is not surprising that you'd have really good attendance, because these are really important issues for people in the county. And I appreciate Ash sharing kind of a personal perspective on what this last year has been like, because I think all of us understand beneath all the work we do that we are witness to some really difficult things out there. And it's hard to be unaffected, particularly when it's not a one-off, but you know that this is all part of a larger problem, and it's become a societal problem, not just somebody you knew got sick, but lots of people are getting sick, and what are we going to do about it? So it's, I did appreciate you're sharing that, Ash. I've been, really pleased with having brought Ash on board in procurement, because when I got here after spending 12 years on the council and hearing constant issues raised about how we procure things and who wins and who loses, I was determined that I wanted to make changes. And I was, bothered by some of the contracts that we have that I thought, where the county was way overpaying for things, and that we really needed to take a fresh look at how we did business in the county. And at the same time, during the campaign, I was out talking to people, and I couldn't go to an event where people wouldn't call me over to their table and start telling me stories about what it was like to try to do business with Montgomery County. And you hear enough of this, and it's not make-believe and it's not complaining, it's real. It was not somebody's imagination. It was the real life experience that many people had with us. And I really wanted to see that changed. That was really important to me. Similarly, and she's not here today, but if we were talking about the permitting system, here was another place where we routinely got raked over the coals for how long it took to do things and what people had to do to get things done. And we began reforms before Mitra came in, and Mitra has accelerated the kind of changes that I wanted to see take place. I had never thought I'd get letters from major companies trying to do expansions telling me how smoothly and quickly the process went, because that's not the kind of feedback we got. In fact, one of the companies, the discussion was premised by, we could go here, but we could also go to Frederick, and we hear that you're not able to do anything in a reasonable amount of time. And we made sure we did it in a reasonable amount of time. And we made sure that we worked with them and creating a culture there of, we'll figure out how to get it done, which doesn't mean cutting the rules and saying we're going to ignore responsibilities, but just working with people to figure out, how do you answer a question? How do you solve a problem? Instead of rejecting a plan and then saying, come back when you figure it out. It's sort of like, if I can't approve this, this is why I can't approve, and this is what you need to do. So the person who is getting the rejection is also getting really clear advice about how to address shortfalls and what they'd put forward. I think those things are important if we're going to change Montgomery County's posture. And if anybody has seen the REACH report, you'll know that Montgomery County's decline in the business world didn't happen yesterday. It didn't happen in 2018. It didn't happen in 2016. It goes back to at least 2010. And we have been on the wrong trajectory. We haven't been asking questions that we should have asked, and we haven't been changing things that we should have changed. And, as I famously told a group of land use attorneys when I was explaining why I wanted to do BRT, and after I did my presentation, somebody got, Steve Elmendorf, actually, the late Steve Elmendorf, who was a really good guy. He said, our guys have looked at this. We just don't understand why you're doing this. And then he said, how are you going to, I'll say, screw us in a polite way? And I said, look, I have no intention of doing that. I said, if I'm as liberal as you think I am, how am I going to fund social programs if I don't have a healthy economy? There is no money for the things that I believe we need to do. There's no money for, promoting equity and raising people up if I don't have a business economy that's able to produce revenues. And so I've always felt that, my job from day one was to try to right the reputation of Montgomery County, build it, put us on a stronger base, and move us forward. And you're going to be hearing more about that as we start talking about White Flint, and you see some of the things we're trying to put together over there. It's not that White Flint is the only center of the universe, but doing a significant groundbreaking project is the kind of thing that will change the reputation for everybody in Montgomery County, because you can't all live in White Flint anyway. But that kind of project will change how people perceive us, where we sit in this region, instead of just doing a master plan and announcing how many square feet we've allowed, which Virginia does not do. They focus on the kind of place they want to be and what they want to be. And that's what we're going to start talking about, is what do we want to be, not how many square feet have I approved. And I think that's going to help move us forward. So I'm really happy to be here this morning. You all are going to hear from 10 county departments, and they're going to be sharing opportunities and best practices for obtaining contracts. And like I said before, I'm really happy that everybody's agreed to participate in this online event. I think a lot of us are probably skeptical of the world of Zoom. When my world began to change, it was, you'd have a Zoom meeting and things were clunky at first, and maybe you'd use Microsoft Teams, also clunky. But things have improved, and I think this has become normal. And I think from what I'm seeing today, I discovered in some of my meetings, more people attended a Zoom meeting or a Teams meeting than ever would come to an in-person meeting, because that meant, setting aside time for travel there, time for travel back, rearranging things around your life to be able to do that. Whereas a person could sit in an office or in their home and attend these meetings. And it made it much, much easier for people to do things. So I've been really happy to see more people rather than fewer people attending the meetings that I've been at. In March, the Office of Procurement quickly shifted to a situational telework status. They played a crucial role in sourcing COVID supplies on behalf of the county. I remember Ash and I were talking in the beginning that we did not want to be caught when the second wave came, because we knew then, wake up, President and Governor, that we were going to get a second wave. And I did not want to not have supplies when the second wave came. And so I told them to buy for what they were going to need months from now. And so we have 6 million masks, hundreds of thousands of gowns and millions of gloves. We've put things in place to make sure that we can get through this, and I'm not out on the market. And I think probably the most fun thing we did is we opened up a store for county businesses where we bought stuff and we were able to pass through the savings to county businesses instead of having them go out on the internet and have their clocks cleaned by people who are taking advantage of the shortage. We were able to use our buying power and share that buying power with businesses in the county, and hopefully that helped. I know Ash was able to get supplies to hospitals in DC, and I think in Prince George's County as well. So we were in an unusual position of being a supplier of crucial things to people at a time when people were desperate to find them. The Office of Procurement handled more than 3,000 emails and calls for vendors to assure that we did not fall short in our needs. And he had to navigate some difficult things. You read these stories about people buying stuff that didn't work. We've been there. We scrutinized many an opportunity to buy something to make sure that if we were going to get it, it was going to work. And so I feel for the governor. I'm not one of these people who's piling on the governor for buying the Korean test kits. I know what he was trying to do, which is provide test kits at a time when there was no federal leadership. It didn't work out the way he had wanted it to work out, but it wasn't for lack of trying. And it's unfortunate it didn't work out. But, Ash and I had conversations with multiple vaccine vendors trying to figure out whether the county could buy vaccines. and get out in front of it. We found the same problem. Somebody would offer us kits, but they didn't have swabs. Or I could get kits and swabs, but nobody had the machinery necessary to process the kits. So been there, done that, and have an appreciation for anybody else who tried to do that. So we're providing more opportunities for folks in this county, vendors, to do business. We've got our, we were able to get our e-procurement system up over the summer, and they updated the site last week. And Procurement's moved their monthly open house and all those events to online with more than 10 county departments. I'm really proud of our ability to pivot and do business differently here. ASH initiated a lot of positive changes. One of the most important is a solicitation tracker, so a vendor can find out the status of any solicitation and track the development of the procurement on the website. People used to say, "What's happening? I haven't heard anything. I don't know." And now people have a way of finding out where these procurements are going. Going into 2020, to finishing 2020, because it's been a challenging year for everybody. We know that we're not going to get through this alone, which is why the partnerships with the business community are so important. Lots of local businesses have stepped up to do things. This has been, I think, an all-in effort on everybody's part to help make sure that we get through this, and we will get through it. I mean, I feel far better than I did in the summer when vaccines were merely a speculation and nobody knew how long it would take to actually bring them to market. We're pretty sure, there are 2 on the market now. Novavax is actually coming. They're in stage 3 trials. If they get approvals in January, that's a third of vaccine, 2 of which will be local, which is really exciting. And, it's good for Montgomery County, just in terms of having 2 major centers of vaccine research here, 2 major companies doing this work, but it's good for Montgomery County because it's, employs these folks, and and I think some of these companies we deal with have some local loyalty. There's a sense that, we were here, we've talked to somebody who's got a rapid test that's going through FDA approval right now. And they've talked about their sense of, a commitment to the local environment and the place to nourish them. So there's a lot to be said for, working with the local businesses. Our local small business reserve program in FY20, we spent $120 million towards local small businesses at 27.8% of the eligible spending. And with minority, female, and disabled-owned businesses in we spent $182 million toward minority and female-owned businesses, which is 23% of eligible spending. And speaking with hundreds of businesses during the 4 business listening sessions that I did last summer with Councilmember Katz, I think all of us gained valuable feedback that's allowed us to reshape the work that the county's doing. We took what people said seriously. I knew this was, we should have done it a long time ago, but when I was in the middle, of campaigning, I realized, we've heard all these complaints. No one's ever sat down and said, come sit down and tell me what exactly is going on here and why is this so hard? And so we actually went out and told people, tell us what's wrong, and then began implementing changes as quickly as we could so we could change that. Ash's, my favorite presentation was Ash holding up before and after contracts, going from these massive documents to really thin sheaves of paper that showed how we had made it easier for people to do contracting with the county. And, last September, it took a while to get passed, I proposed a bill to create a local business preference program for obtaining county contracts. And I'm really proud of that because local small businesses, when they get a contract in the county, that money stays in the county. Their owner most likely lives here. Their employees most likely live here. They spend the money they make here in the county. The buildings they rent pay county property taxes. The personal property they have in their businesses pays a county property tax. Every dollar we spend comes back here in one way or the other. And that's not true when we contract with somebody from Virginia or Pennsylvania who may send somebody in here to do the job, but those incomes and those, both the individual incomes and the corporate incomes, go to some other state. And I like, having those incomes here. So, you never capture when you just do an evaluation of what's the price of this bid versus another bid. You never capture the effect of circulating money inside this economy. And I had thought about that because I remembered every time we were talking about giving a grant to a business that wanted to come to Montgomery County, the analysts always talked about the multiplier effect. And they said, these many people would come here and they'd spend this much money, and they'd spend this much money in the stores. And what was true for any business coming here was true for our local businesses. They need the business to stay open. Keeping them open keeps the money in the county. I thought that was a good idea. So I was glad the council passed it in June, and the law became effective August 1st. And it's intended to bolster our economic growth and support the creation and retention of employment opportunities within the county. It's an example of my commitment to businesses here. Several of these chambers supported the local business preference legislation. Thank you very much. And I'm excited to continue working with them. Our local chambers have represented the business community for many years, and we appreciate their commitment to Montgomery County. And you all have worked with us on the recovery. You've helped design programs and make sure that we can get money out as effectively as possible. And we've put a lot of money out into the community. We anticipate putting more money out. There's federal government looks like they're going to be providing some assistance to local government again. It's not the $1.8 billion they could have had the day before the election, but it's $900 million, and it's not insubstantial, and carved out in that is a chunk for local government. And so we anticipate, in fact, we know that after the CARES money runs out at the end of this month, we just can't fold up shop and stop our programs. So as soon as we know what we're working with, we will, continue funding things we know we need to fund. So as long as the business community and the residents of the county need support, we can continue to get that support into the community. So we will continue working at this. And with all of that, just thank you all. Thank you very much for being here and for all your assistance during the course of the year. And now I would like to introduce Janetta Italiano from the Greater Business Chamber of Commerce. And shortly I will be going to my next meeting. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Ash. And thanks everybody for being here. On behalf of the Greater Bethesda Chamber, I just wanted to thank everyone for participating in this. As Mark had mentioned, and Ash, we've been working very closely with the Montgomery County government entirely, with procurement and with all the other departments to try to ensure that our members get as much assistance as possible. This program looks fantastic. I'm not going to talk on, so I just want to, because I know everybody wants to see the new programs that are available for our businesses. But again, thanks for allowing us to be a part of it, and look forward to seeing the program today.
And I guess I'm next. I'm Jane Redeker, and on behalf of the Greater Silver Spring Chamber of Commerce, I want to welcome everyone. Like my colleague Janetta, we've had to pivot as well, and Ash talked about change, and Ash talked about the department changing, and we thank him for everything he's done to make the department much more business friendly and much easier to deal with. And we've seen evidence of that success already. We've seen as a chamber that change brings opportunity, and opportunities for us to serve our members in better ways, but opportunities for us to work with our county government and work with them in ways that make sense. So I want to thank him. I want to thank everybody who's here today. And thank you for coming. And like Janetta, I want to let you get on to the real program. So I'm going to let my colleague Marilyn say a few words and say enjoy the day and enjoy the weekend. And I hope I hope everybody gets a great deal out of this conference, because it's a really wonderful thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane, and thank you, Ash. County Executive Mark Alrich, this has been a great intro to procurement. And as I tell my members, if you tried going through county procurement in the past and you got turned off somehow, please try again. This is a new department. This is a new administration, and I think Ash has just done a fabulous job with the support of the county executive to really make it so much easier, particularly for our small businesses. Many times we've heard that they just don't have the resources to go after a bid. That's changed. So I wish everyone well today. As a chamber exec with my colleagues, the one thing we do is we do events, and the one thing we want to make sure is that they're on time. So you guys can get to it. So good luck, everyone, and hopefully you will be doing business with the county. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank guest speakers for helping set the stage for this event. But without